Okay, Hub, I am now reading The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Wish me luck. I cry at nothing, and I cry most of the time. Well, that's me.
That is a 100% completely appropriate response to the yellow wallpaper. I really like the weirdness of it, and I think it's because it's so appropriate, because I think it really conveys that she's just descending into this psychosis, and with the perspective, because it really makes you feel that insanity that's coming over her. But aside from that too, I really like the message that Gilman had behind it as well, and kind of some of the history behind it and her own personal history too. So one kind of interesting little piece of trivia or whatever is a cure for depression that was really common at the time that Gilman wrote that, and that she had actually been prescribed herself, was called the rest cure. And it was basically the idea that depression comes from overusing your brain, and so you need to not use your brain to get over it. So they would put these women in these rooms, like what happened in the story, and they couldn't read or write or do anything creative because they were resting their brains, right? But it was totally misconceived idea that it wasn't effective, it didn't work. But it was kind of rooted in the concept that women were weaker than men, and that women didn't even know how to take care of themselves. Like how John's like, I'm a doctor, and you're not a doctor, so I definitely know what's good for you. Yep, I know, not you. And that was really happening to women, and they were being locked up and driven insane. They were ending up in the attic before they had gone crazy. Gilman's doctor told her that she wasn't supposed to write anymore ever again for the rest of her life if she wanted to get over her depression, and she was like, nah. And so then she went out and she wrote this book to draw attention to the negative effects of that, and kind of just draw attention to the idea that, you need to listen to women too, to see their opinion and their side of the story, to see what's actually happening. And so that's kind of the history behind it. And so I think that the message that it was conveying, and that was something that I was unaware of that was going on at that time too, is all really interesting, as well as just the visual at the end. And then John finally got in the door, and he was like, ah, and he faints, and she's like, the nerve, I gotta crawl over you while I shuffle across the floor in my psychosis.
Well, what really got me was that she acts like a child. Like how she talks and how her mind thinks is just so sad. Because everything was based on what her husband said and what other people. I just like too that he tried to stifle her imagination, and it just came out in other forms. Like she became obsessed with inanimate objects in the room. She kind of personified things, and she saw things obsessively realistic. And so in the end, her imagination was not stifled at all. Nothing was cured, because she would just let it out in other ways if he prevented her from doing it in one way. Just so many people's thoughts were just misconstrued so badly, where they thought that docile was fine, like in the asylums, and they'd mess with people's brains till they had no personality and they were just calm and they just said they were cured. Just don't even get me started on the brains.
I think that her really docile mentality was supposed to represent the way that men thought about women. And I also think that she made her so tame because she put their ideas ahead of her own and let them ignore her own opinions. And it was because she was so docile that she ended up the way she did. Yeah, it would definitely have been an instilled mentality, something they grew up with, and something that was enforced and supported by society too. It was what they were expected to do, and so they were conforming to the role they were expected to play. Well, I get the idea of oh, your brain is freaking out, it's probably overloaded, better give it a rest. But let's just leave you all alone with nothing but your thoughts. I think anybody who's ever actually had depression realizes what a terrible, terrible idea that is. And there were literally women with opinion there. They're like, nah, girl, you just you go sit alone and don't think about it. Don't think anything at all. It'll fix you. And then all of these women are like, it's not working. And they're like, Didn't I tell you to go sit down? And then the women go crazy and peel off all the wallpaper and creep around, and then they're like, what could have been wrong? What could it possibly have been? What happened? What a mystery! What a great mystery! We'll never know. It might never be solved. It might never.
I was just reading on Spark Notes too. I didn't realize this at first. I didn't pick it up. That the things she was seeing in the wallpaper were just, she was seeing herself in her own situation. And so at first she's thinking like she even wants to tie that lady up in the wallpaper herself and control her and not let her escape, before she realizes it's herself and that she does want to escape from this.
Yeah, I really like that part of the story too, and I was thinking that it was something that was brought out in my literature class, that yellow is a happy color, but it was like on the outside it was pretty, it was fine. It's all superficial. It's like how society wanted to perceive them as basically being like house ornaments to look nice, but underneath there was all of this suffering, and they were trapped behind that facade, behind that expectation.
Dang, I just read too that even after this book was published and knowledge came out about the breast cure, it was still used like even 16 years after. Some people even just consider that book to be horror. Like, that's real stuff there. That's real stuff. And that is why I live in my own little world. Thank you.
Well, let's just be honest. Reality is horror. Says the person wearing pajamas at 5 p.m.
Only you would be able to tell that because my dresses look exactly the same, whether they're pajamas or normal day wear.
I don't get to be co-host of the literature discussions for no reason. Co-host, partners, whatever. Host, co-host, partner, Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All.